You were live in the CNN newsroom. I'm Jim Acosta in Washington. Good evening. We begin the hour with the Biden campaign, linking former President Donald Trump to the most reviled man in history, saying the former president channeled his role models and, quote, parroted Adolf Hitler at a New Hampshire campaign rally. That's in response to Trump once again accusing immigrants of, quote, poisoning the blood of the country, an echo of the vile rhetoric used by Nazi Germany to justify the Holocaust.
They're poisoning the blood of our country. That's what they've done. They poison mental institutions and prisons all over the world, not just in South America, not just the 3 or 4 countries that we think about, but all over the world. They're coming into our country from Africa, from Asia, all over the world. They're pouring into our country.
And Republican presidential candidate Chris Christie once again warning today that the GOP needs to pay attention to the reality of what those comments truly mean.
He's disgusting. And what he's doing is dog whistling to Americans who feel absolutely under stress and strain from the economy and from the conflicts around the world. And he's dog whistling it to blame it on people from areas that don't look like us.
And when it comes to American democracy, Trump is taking his cues from a ruthless dictator who murders political dissidents, refuses to comply with international law, illegally detains Americans, and attempts to subvert the democratic process.
Vladimir Putin of Russia says that Biden's, and this is a quote, politically motivated persecution of his political rival is very good for Russia because it shows the rottenness of the American political system, which cannot pretend to teach others about democracy.
If Trump's admiration for authoritarians wasn't clear enough at yesterday's rally, he also quoted the Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban and praised the world's harshest dictator, Kim Jong-un, as, quote, very nice. CNN's Priscilla Alvarez joins me now. Priscilla, what's the White House saying about all of this dark rhetoric?
The resounding message is that it's dangerous. And we heard that directly from a White House spokesperson who said the following, quote, echoing the grotesque rhetoric of fascists and violent white supremacists and threatening to oppress those who disagree with the government are dangerous attacks on the dignity and rights of all Americans, on our democracy, and on public safety. It's the opposite of everything we stand for as Americans. Now, Jim, President Biden in private events with donors has also condemned his predecessor's language as he campaigns and said that his rhetoric is likened to Nazi terminology. So we've heard this before from the president himself, and the White House and the Biden campaign have repeatedly gone after and blasted the former president for his controversial immigration proposals should he take a second term. So far that the president himself issued his first statement through his re-election campaign condemning Trump's travel ban on predominantly Muslim countries, calling it, quote, cruel. But of course, Jim, this is a delicate issue for the White House. It's a political liability going into 2024. You don't have to look much further than what's happening on Capitol Hill, where border talks are at the center of the president getting aid to Ukraine and Israel, and Republicans continue to slam the Biden administration over its handling of the U.S.-Mexico border. So the president both confronting that reality here in Washington while also condemning and trying to strike a different vision on America and immigration against his predecessor, former President Trump.
All right, Priscilla Alvarez, thank you very much for that. And joining us now to discuss, Larry Sabato, Director of the Center for Politics at the University of Virginia. Larry, great to have you back. What was your response when you heard Trump's comments this weekend about immigrants poisoning the blood of the country and some of these other remarks that he made?
We've heard it all before in various forms. He is getting worse. I think Chris Christie on your air earlier today said he's getting crazier as election day approaches, or maybe he feels like the walls are closing in. But listen, Joe Biden and the Democrats are absolutely right to bring this to people's attention as often as possible. This is not only revolting, to use Adolf Hitler's own words, practically word for word, but to say the kinds of things that he's saying about immigrants. It's not the American way, and it will sell in a Republican primary. The MAGA base loves it. They cheer him every time he says it, and the rest of the Republican Party is too afraid of Trump to challenge him. But I'll tell you where it won't sell, and that's in a general election. It isn't going to sell, certainly with Democrats, and it isn't going to sell with most independents either. That's not the image of America that a large majority have.
Right, and it might be tempting for some folks to say, oh, the White House went too far, making this comparison between Trump's remarks yesterday and remarks used by Adolf Hitler. But, we just need to show the New York Times recently looked at Trump's extremist rhetoric and noted that in Hitler's manifesto, Mein Kampf, there is a chapter titled Race and People, and Hitler wrote, all the great civilizations of the past became decadent because the originally creative race died out as a result of contamination of the blood. And in another passage, he links the poison, which has invaded the national body, to an influx of foreign blood. I just have to wonder, Larry, where is, we know Chris Christie has been out there saying this. He's been pretty consistent on this, but where is the rest of the Republican Party? There was a time, Larry, that inside the offices of the RNC, alarm bells would have been going off if a previous Republican frontrunner was using Hitler-like rhetoric, but not this time around.
Well, Trump has gotten away with it for so long, and they know that if they object in any way, shape, or form to what Trump is doing, they'll get the backlash from the MAGA base, and there are millions of them. And they're all Republicans. These are people who are working inside the party, in many places have taken over the party. But, Trump knows exactly what he's doing. He knows what his base loves. He knows what motivates them, and he's done it over and over. I'm a guy sitting in Charlottesville, and I remember the neo-Nazi riot here in August 2017. Remember, after that, Trump said there are fine people on both sides. And his dallying with David Duke and his encouragement of the Proud Boys. And we can go on and on. There's a method to his madness. It is madness, but there's a method to it.
Well, and I want to show a compilation of some of the rhetoric that he has used so far on the 2024 campaign trail. This is obviously not all of it in its totality, but here's a sample. Let's play it.
They're poisoning the blood of our country. That's what they've done. They poison mental institutions and prisons all over the world, not just in South America, not just the 3 or 4 countries that we think about, but all over the world. We will root out the communists, Marxists, fascists, and the radical left thugs that live like vermin within the confines of our country.
You are promising America tonight you would never abuse power as retribution against anybody.
Except for day one.
Except
Look,
for?
he's going crazy. Except for day one. Be a dictator for one day. But the New York Times said, and you know why I wanted to be a dictator? Because I want a wall, right? I want a wall, and I want to drill, drill, drill.
So, Larry, this is not a one-off, and we've heard some Republican lawmakers up on Capitol Hill say, well, he says the dictator stuff for a comedic effect. It riles up the base and that sort of thing. I guess one of the questions that I have, and I think it's a question a lot of Americans have, is this who Donald Trump is? Is this what he really thinks? Or is he just playing to the audience? That is a question that you hear time and again. What's your thought on that, Larry?
My thought is, who cares? It doesn't matter. Presidential words matter. Presidential candidates' words matter. And they have implications for policy, implications for relations around the world, and how our country itself can get along one to another. So that's what's important about it. He's saying it, and he said it over and over again. And to some degree, I think it is true. You listen to what he says, and he's going to try and carry through. Maybe it will work, maybe it won't, but he'll try. He'll do outrageous things, and people need to be aware it isn't just rhetoric anymore. And those Republican congressmen and Republican governors who haven't said a word, who haven't said one word negative about Donald Trump in public. In private, they'll tell you plenty. But in public, they are all encouraging him directly or indirectly. And they're going to be held accountable for it eventually, maybe only by history, but they're going to be held accountable for it. Because what they've done is completely irresponsible, and it has led to the re-rise, the resurrection of Donald Trump.
One of the things we have also seen is Nikki Haley, just maybe incrementally, she has started to ratchet up her criticism of the former president. She had this to say about Trump's actions on January 6th earlier today. She said this on ABC. Let's listen to that.
When President Trump had the opportunity to stop it, when he had the opportunity to say it, the bully pulpit matters. People listen. He didn't. And I hate that for the people that were there supporting him. I hate that for those of us that were watching it. But what I do know is he was the right president at the right time.
Larry, what do you think of all that? I mean, there's sort of a criticism mixed with a compliment there. It's, you know, sort of looking for a Goldilocks formula, not too hot, not too cold. But she is gaining on Trump. I mean, a new CBS News poll shows Donald Trump firmly in the lead in Iowa and New Hampshire, but Nikki Haley is gaining some momentum. If we have any of those polls, we can show it up on screen for you. But, you know, she's at 29% now in New Hampshire. Do you think the question can be asked, you know, do we talk about Trump too much and do we not talk about Nikki Haley enough? What do you make of where she is right now?
Well, if she does indeed end up winning New Hampshire, and that's what it will take, she's not going to win Iowa. I think even our own staff understands that, because the governor in Iowa, who's also very popular, is supporting DeSantis. The governor in New Hampshire, Chris Sununu, is now supporting enthusiastically Nikki Haley. And it probably will make some difference. It already is making some difference, because independents, not just Republicans, can vote in the GOP primary for president in New Hampshire. But, you know, you listen to that and you realize she's still trying to have it both ways. Now, I give her credit for at least trying to have it both ways. Most Republicans only want it one way, Donald Trump's way. But her statement is, you know, 2.5 years too late. What she said is perfectly obvious and was obvious on January 6th. The sad situation we're in is that a milquetoast statement like the one Nikki Haley said can get the positive attention it's getting. It's sad.
Well, and I suppose you could make the argument, Larry, that getting back to the question earlier, you know, is this Donald Trump? Is this who he is? Is he just saying these things because he knows it'll help him win the nomination? To some extent, that's neither here nor there because of January 6th, because of his actions around January 6th. He attempted to overturn an election. And so you couple that with this very extremist and vile and hateful rhetoric he's been spewing out on the campaign trail. Obviously, I mean, why wouldn't any American take him seriously?
Well, they ought to take him seriously, and he did prove it on January 6th and 100 other occasions. It wasn't just January 6th. You know, I remember, and you remember, in when he was running the first time in 2016 and even the first half of his term, you had some Republicans and conservatives saying, oh, look at these crazy liberals suggesting that Donald Trump won't leave office on time, or that he might pull a coup d'etat. Well, who turned out to be right? He tried to pull America's first coup d'etat. Why is it that now that he says, yeah, I'll be a dictator on day one, and by the way, if you're a dictator on day one, you can have the rest of the term as dictator. You may decide you like it on day one. Why is it that people don't believe that either? Maybe since they were wrong about January 6th, they ought to consider that they're wrong in thinking that Trump won't try to become truly authoritarian or a dictator.
All right, Larry Sabato, thanks again for joining us. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Jim.